So a big part of why I'm here is to clean up the sexual wellness industry with what I like to call lazy advice. Now, take a moment and ponder, what is lazy sex advice? Well, we're going to go through some of the big ones that you hear all the time in this industry. And frankly, I'm just like, can't we be any more creative? Now, I actually believe people in the industry, a lot of them, now some of them, of course, there's people out there who just want to make money, but there are plenty who really do want to just lend a helping ear, be there just to kind of speak with the person. But the truth is, that's what you'd expect from a good friend. And I mean, maybe you have a good friend that knows a little bit of something, but if you're an actual professional in the industry, if you are actually maybe even the top voice in podcasts in the industry, then I'm sorry, but I simply expect more. So this probably won't be the last one that I do on the topic of, sorry, Emily, but your podcast, Sex with Emily. Now, I was listening to an episode, and I even took notes. I was going to be playing the audio for you. There's this whole thing about copyright and fair use. I said, you know what? I'll just summarize what it was that was being spoken about. The episode itself, better oral and honeymoon sex. Now, let's just go through I actually went through each one of the people that came on there, the guests. So I want to show you what was being said, the advice that was given, and offer something that just is deeper, something that actually can create change, as opposed to just making the person feel good. Now, that's really important. That's always important, to deliver something that helps the person feel good so you don't shame them. But ultimately, they're coming to you because there's something going on and you need to be able to help them find a different solution. And I feel that so much advice instead simply gives a little pat on the butt towards mediocrity and just says it's common and therefore it's okay, and normalizes it. They normalize mediocrity is what I'm saying. Now, let's look at this. Person comes on, asks Dr. Emily, which I find out isn't actually a medical doctor or even necessarily a doctorate, maybe a doctorate, but it's anyways from a university that I guess doesn't exist anymore. This is what I believe. Don't quote me on it. At least what I saw when I kind of looked up this thing, Dr. Emily. So there's some questions if that is really the correct title out there. I guess maybe there was some sort of PhD from an unaccredited university. But anyways, I digress. First thing, person comes on, says, I love sex, love penetrative sex, in fact, and can even have orgasms from it. To which Emily's like, oh, wow, well, that's, quite stunning. It's good, great, awesome for you. However, the person said that they are not able to have pleasure from oral sex. They'd struggle receiving it, not giving, but receiving. And specifically having an orgasm from receiving oral sex. So the question was, how can I do this with my partner? Now, Emily says that this is actually something that she sees quite a lot. Women that can actually have orgasm from penetrative sex but cannot enjoy receiving it. So she proceeds to take her through some advice. And as I start listening, I just go, really? This is what we got? Now, again, my opinion, but first thing, right off the bat, and the one that I hear all the time is that, well, essentially says, it could just be that you're born that way. And there's even science to back it up. The whole clitoris, the distance between the clitoris and the vaginal opening, and I can tell you the history of that. It's actually quite fascinating. And there's even an acronym for it called CUMD, which if you sound it out, cummed, makes me think that there's some academics out there that still have, a sense of humor. And that is the clitoral urethral meatus distance. And that is the distance essentially between the clitoris and the urethral meatus, which is the area around the pee hole, or you could even say some will measure it more from the clitoris, and I guess it would be the glands, the tip of the clitoris, down to the vaginal opening. If you want to get a little more technical, there in history has been some issues around measuring that distance. Now, actually, I'll make a whole video on that at some point, because it really is a really fascinating story involving surgeries and everything else and trying to change. But essentially, it's that the larger this distance is, then the less likely you are to have an orgasm. Now, that is actually from penetration. So I'm not sure how that really then applies to being born that way with oral sex. And if you read in the article, again, anyways, I'll go into that. I'll go deeper. It'll be a good one. But she then says, you're not doing anything wrong. In fact, every vulva is different. Okay. Every person's different. I mean, I remember the thing that irritated me the most when I was in university was that everything's an opinion. It's all subjective. And then that was sort of the end of a discussion. You couldn't really even have a debate. Now, I would think that a sex therapist or someone who's an expert or the sex doctor would be able to tell you how anatomies are actually similar and use that as a point of empowering to then help a person who's not experiencing something they want to be able to experience it. Because let's face it, our bodies are actually much more similar than they are different, especially if you just are looking at the anatomical structures and the biomechanics. Anyways, there's a whole piece that I teach around anatomy as a system of pleasure. And if you understand that, how the pelvic floor, the breath, everything works, even this distance that you talk about, when you engage the pelvic floor and breathe in a particular way, that distance will increase and decrease as you breathe. Take a look at a mirror. You'll see if you're doing it correctly. Now, I will get into that, and you can check it all out at the Embodied Love University, where we have free, and by we I mean Dr. Saida Desolé and I, have tons of free educational material, and you'll be more than educated on that. Again, I don't want to go into the depths of that right now. I'm critiquing the common advice out there. So first of all, just that you're born that way. If you hear that from somebody, then just save your whatever it is, $150, $500, $1,000, even the phone bill it costs to call into a show that tells you that. Second thing, then she goes, well, you know what? You should experiment, make it work for you, and use a vibrator. Maybe insert a finger. Now, that to me is just, okay, great. We have that advice everywhere. Now, the whole thing about use a vibrator, again, it's, in fact, pretty much every advice that's coming off of that show and by most sex therapists out there is use a vibrator. Well, what does the sexual wellness industry sell? Top sellers, pornography, vibrators, sex therapists. Now, it is a multi-billion-dollar industry. And again, it's externalizing, whether it's a screen, a person telling you what to do, or a vibrator that is externalizing an internal challenge, taking you further away from your body, not really teaching about how your body works as a system of pleasure, let alone the psychodynamics that end up happening. So that way then you're not dealing with, or that you're at least able to dive through the shame, the pain, the fear, the anger, all the negative emotions, and actually transform them into positive ones and find the mental arousal that should complement the physical arousal. But again, this is going deeper than the point of this particular video. She then goes further and says, well, the person is just probably not licking in the way that you like, and, you know, the guy just doesn't know what he's doing. All right, probably true. I mean, wow, okay, so far we have three obvious statements. But again, my issue with that kind of advice is, what is it good to just say, this is not what you like, and then let's experiment? Well, if she doesn't know what she likes, and that's why she's coming for the question, then experimenting, how? Well, just do what you don't do. Well, but do what you like, but do what you don't. I mean, you start getting confused, you see? And then I'll imagine the person on the other side. well, I mean, he's probably just doing the thing that he's always done. Maybe she's even been faking it and he's just following along there. And either way, to just place the blame and say you're not doing it right and experiment is not going to get people towards figuring out the yes. Again, you need to educate on how you start to use your breath, how you use your movement, how your entire genital system, your pelvic floor, can engage to actually start to create this pleasure, to start to allow a person to be able to receive. And there are very specific ways that we are typically not breathing that are restricting blood flow from going to the places that it needs to deliver the oxygen that fires off the nerves that then can bring us into pleasure and different states of orgasm. Now, the last thing she says, she's like, I don't want to force you. I'm going to quote this here. I actually even wrote it down. But you could try to explore together. Let him know it feels good. You're not broken. All right. True, again, and very powerful words. Help the person know they're not broken. But in terms of forcing a person, well, she's coming to you for advice. You're not actually forcing her. Just give her something different to do that maybe isn't a vibrator. Say that the guy isn't doing it right and saying that you were just born that way. I mean, that's maybe you're not forcing, but how about forcing the person into a corner? I mean, how's she going to get out of that? Now, instead, this is what I would have done. I would have heard this question. I would have been asking the person, well, how do you normally bring yourself to pleasure? Notice what your pelvic floor is doing. Now, normally, and I imagine this is a person maybe they're going to listen to this at some point and right there in the comments, or maybe you're a person who has problems with receiving oral. But if you are squeezing your pelvic floor, trying to either get sensation or because you're nervous, sitting frozen there, not breathing deeply, then the chances that you're actually going to get out of your head, start feeling more in your body, get blood flow moving in the way that it needs to, is unlikely. Also, the importance of being able to explore yourself with your own fingers, working in a way with your pelvic floor that you're not just trying to squeeze for pleasure, is already going to help to train you to have a different experience, to learn the things that you like. So that way you're not just telling the person what not to do, but you're actually telling them what to do. So, in just really brief summary, because I don't want to overload you, trust me, go to embodiedloveuniversity.com. You are going to find a plethora of information there on how to start to literally begin to do the things that you need to do to receive more pleasure, which is to resensitize your body. And that means physically start to feel more, become more aware of subtle sensations and how those can start to actually build into extreme amounts of pleasure, even having micro movements, creating macro sensations. You're also going to learn how to resensitize in terms of making yourself emotionally available to yourself and during a sexual experience to your partner, because then that is going to help you not to be looping through negative emotions stuck in your head. The other issue that it's going to help you deal with is starting to begin to understand a different way to actually stimulate yourself. So we're talking now body mechanics, and that means not just taking the vibrator, buzzing it on the clitoris, cranking one off quickly, and then entering the refractory period, not wanting to touch, or maybe even get 2 or 3 and then just like going to sleep, because frankly, that's not how you would really want a lover to actually treat you. You would prefer something with a little bit more woo going on, but if you don't do that for yourself or learn how to actually work with your own hands and start to become aware of these subtle sensations and actually learn that just this isn't what's going to give you all the stimulation that you can feel, you're going to also then start to realize, oh, whoa, hey, there's other things out there. So resensitize, learn different body mechanics, and then lastly, open yourself up to the definition that there are different sensations that lead towards different types of feelings that are orgasm. So redefine how orgasm actually can be. If you think that it's only going to happen by a very specific type of clitoral stimulation, then there's more to explore, and that's really exciting. And it's not just for those of you that are born with the lucky star above your head. No, this is something that I have coached thousands of women on. Something that Dr. Saida has also opened up the possibility for tens of thousands of women. And in terms of being able to actually build protocols that have helped even more people, this is something that we are passionate about, something that you're going to find readily available to you. And it's all right there at the Embodied Love University. And there is so much potential in you to find something completely different. And just to kind of bring it all back, I'm sick and tired of lazy sex advice that just says you're born a certain way, that just says you're doing something wrong, and just revert to toys. I mean, hasn't much changed in the last 20 or 30 years? And is that all that we can offer? So as for me, when it comes to sex with Emily, no thank you. I'm a good pass.